Hi, it's Rabbi Eisenberg and welcome to this week's Star Torah. In this week's set of Pashas Devarim, we read about the story of the Meraglim one more time. We read some of the other perspectives about the Meraglim, about the spies that were sent out, which we read about already in Pashas Shlach Lecha. One of the interesting things that we read about the Meraglim in this week's Sedra is something that struck me as very important. And that's the following. The Meraglim, the spies are sent out. They come back and they give a report about the land of Israel. And then when they give this report about the land of Israel, they say, the land is a wonderful land. It might be very hard to conquer. It might be impossible to conquer. But the land is wonderful. And then the Jewish people turn around and then they say the following. And that is something that I feel is so terrible. That I feel there's something that shows such a lack of hakaras hatov, a lack of gratitude to God. They say, "B'sinas Hashem osanu, hotzionu meretz Mitzrayim." Do you know why God took us out of Egypt? Because God hates us. Because God wants to get us. Because He wants to do us a terrible misdeed and a misfortune. To think about that, to come up with that sort of language, that I feel is almost inexcusable. God took the Jewish people. He chose them as His own people. He gave the Egyptians 10 plagues. Blood and frogs and lice and pestilence and thunder and lightning and all the things that absolutely obliterated the entire Egypt. He takes the Jewish people out of Egypt. He takes them to the sea. He splits the sea for them. The sea closes in on the Egyptians. The Egyptians die and the Jewish people survive. They get a tremendous amount of bounty and booty from standing there by the Yam Suf at the Sea of Reeds. They make their way into the desert. There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to drink. And God gives them daily food and God gives them daily drink. And they're able to sustain themselves and they're sustaining their children from heavenly food. Their clothing is all taken care of. They are in a comfortable climate and surrounded by the clouds of glory. And now there's a question mark of whether or not God hates the Jewish people. Whether God is trying to do them a favor or a disservice. And they're looking at everything they've done and they said, God is just trying to set us up for failure. God wants to take us, wants to give us all this goodness and then step on us and ruin us. And that is where the Jewish people sinned. It might be correct to say that the Jewish people were afraid. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the Jewish people being afraid. They were in a terrible situation. They were in a crisis. They didn't know whether or not they were going to manage to come into the land of Israel. But to look back at all the goodness that they've received and to turn around and say that goodness is for naught and for nothing. God hates us after everything He's done for you, after everything He's given you. This is where the Jewish people went very badly wrong. And I think we also need to understand this, and we also need to realize this. There are bad things that happen in our life, but there are so many more good things that happen in our life that for us to turn around and ever to say that God hates us or that God doesn't like us would be looking at all the goodness that we've received and being absolutely ungrateful for everything that you have. And that is the sin of the spies, and that is the sin of the Jewish people. And that is what created the first Golus, the first exile, where the Jewish people were meant to come into Israel immediately and instead had to remain in the desert for 38 years. We need to start looking at the good that we receive from others, whether it is from our families, whether it's from our children, whether it's from our spouses, and whether it's from God. And starting to appreciate that, starting to feel that that has been given to us. These are people that love us, not people that hate us. And the more we focus on the good and the less we focus on the bad, the more you have an ayin tov, a good eye, the closer you make your way to the Geula, the closer you make your way to the final redemption. May this be the final Tisha B'Av. May we not even have to sit on Tisha B'Av, but if we do, may this be the final Tisha B'Av. Let's start seeing the good in each other. Let's start seeing the positive in each other instead of looking for the negatives. And let us work our way towards the Geula, towards the final redemption. May it come speedily in our days. Wishing you a very good Shabbos.